स्थापकाय च धर्मस्य सर्वधर्मस्वरूपिणे स्थापकाय च धर्मस्य सर्वधर्मस्वरूपिणे अवतारवरिष्ठाय रामकृष्णाय ते नमः। असतो मा सद्गमय तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमय असतो मा सद्गमय तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमय मृत्योर्मा मृतंगमय। ओम शांति शांति शांति। I offer my salutation to Sri Ramakrishna, the establisher of religion universal, the embodiment of all world religions, the noblest of divine incarnations. O Divine Lord, lead us from unreal to real. Lead us from darkness of ignorance to light of knowledge. And lead us from death to immortality. Let us be freed from all afflictions and experience joy in peace and tranquility. Good morning. Welcome, friends. Today I am going to speak on the topic, turn thine eyes unto thyself. I am dealing with the topics that are practical lessons on spirituality. If we are serious and sincere about our spiritual life, we must take note of all these lessons, which are very useful in our sadhana. If we ponder how our life is moving on, we would be able to rectify the possible mistakes and make it meaningful, useful, and beautiful, and then become blessed. Please note, our life is our own. We have only ourselves to thank for what we are, have been, and will be. We should take our present into our own hand and consciously shape out of it our future. Our spiritual masters have shown us the right path, pointing out our life purpose, namely to get release of all types of weaknesses and uneasiness and experience the perpetual joy and peace in absolute freedom. The moment we are born in this world, why we come across innumerable troubles, non-stop. Why so? Our Upanishad clearly indicates the reasons for it. Paranchikani, parang pashyati nantaratman. Beautifully it is said, the rishis have found out the reasons in their meditation why man is suffering. It is because of his own improper way of life. If we understand how to live our life properly, there should not be any kind of trouble that we should become warrant. Now here the Kathopanishad tells the indriyas, the sense organs such as eyes, ears, etc., are going outwards. They are ever busy seeing the external, and subsequently they become trapped by allurements. They do not care to see the internal Atman, setting their hearts on worthless objects of senses. People become victims of anxiety. The fate of such people has been well pointed out by Lord Krishna in Srimad Bhagavad Gita. Aneka chitta vibhranta mohajala samavritaah prasakta kama bhogeshu patanti narakeshu chau. Bewildered by many thoughts, entangled in the meshes of delusion, and addicted to the gratification of desires, they fell into a foul hell. As the waves rise incessantly on the surface of the ocean, in the same way, these people desire endless pleasures. But is it ever possible to satisfy the indriyas? Even as a pitcher falling on top of a rock is broken in pieces, so are their hearts shattered. They are caught in delusion, which makes them commit more and more sins, more and more crimes. They heap up to such an extent that even during their lives they experience the horrors of hell, such as increasing agonies and various types of tortures. This is the warning Lord has given us. Why not we become wise enough to understand and control before it is too late? Each outgoing sense exerts tremendous pressure on man, and the result of their combined attack can very well be imagined. For example, listening can do harm in the same way as the deer is exposed to danger when it lifts its earlobes, hearing a noise, and runs about. By the touch of the female, the male elephant gets excited and is caught by the hunter. The moth which sights the flame is attracted to it and it perishes by falling into it. Taste draws the fish to the bait. The smell of honey attracts the bee and its legs stick to the fluid as it sits on it. The cumulative effect of all these evils is that man is unable to escape from worldliness and is ever held in bondage because all these organs are sticking on to the objects, and the man is not able to withdraw from the attraction of these objects. So we are facing all these troubles because our eyes are habituated to see the things outside. Here, the word eyes is figuratively used for all the senses. In consequence, mind receives all these impressions through the organs and so behaves in a disorderly way. What is this mind after all? We should know. It is sometimes likened to sponge. When dipped in crystal clear water, sponge absorbs water, and when squeezed, it gives out the same quality and quantity of water. When immersed in filthy water, it sucks in dirt, and when pressed, all the dirt with it, stench, flows out. So also, the mind is susceptible to influences. The wayward mind and the powerful senses it is associated with ought to be controlled. They should be weaned from their wonted ways and directed on right lines. Now herein comes the need and importance of turn thine eyes unto thyself. By earnest and persistent practice, we can achieve good results. One who wants to learn swimming has to be at it repeatedly, and it cannot be learnt in 1 or 2 attempts. So constant practice is a powerful weapon that can change the quality of the mind. Otherwise, it is impossible to discipline the vagrant mind and turbulent senses. Then, suffering is the price we have to pay in such a case. Day in, day out, we are committing a grave mistake of picking out faults at others. This is a serious lapse which we should note and correct. The holy men warn, why do you see the speck that is in your brother's eye, but do not notice the log that is in your own eye? How true it is. Acharya Shankara was once teaching his disciples on the doctrine of the unity of the Atman with Ishvara. Every day, Acharya Shankarji was discussing about the nature of Atman. There was one disciple who had joined him recently. This new entrant was very obedient, industrious, righteous, and taciturn. He was an exemplar in the service of Guru. He would do everything for his teacher, anticipating his want. He was very attentive to whatever the teacher said and did everything for him, even without being told. So he belonged to the best category of disciples. So he served his Guru meticulously. One day, this new disciple was washing his teacher's clothes, and he could not come to the class on time. The other disciples were very impatient. They began to chant Shanti mantras, which was the usual practice before the commencement of the class. At that time, Acharya Shankara stopped them and asked them to wait for a moment until that new disciple also returned. Now, then came the blasphemous criticism from one of the disciples who said, "Sir, whom are we to wait for? What qualification has a fellow so dull as that wall for the study of the Shastras, scriptures?" This disciple was egoistic and proud that he was intelligent than that new entrant, the new disciple. So he was carelessly passing a remark. This was none of his business to pass such disparaging remarks. This is utterly a great mistake on the part of the disciple who wants to live a higher life. Acharya Shankar wanted to dispel the pride of these disciples. What he did, his grace began to flow immediately, incessantly on his disciple, the new disciple, on whom the other disciples spoke slanderously. Acharya Shankarji awakened in the new disciple by an act of will the knowledge of 14 subjects. He became the embodiment of knowledge, that disciple. He composed beautiful literature containing the highest teachings of the Veda in brief, but superbly beautiful. He came to be famous as Totakacharya. On witnessing the wisdom and the poetical skill manifested through him, the other disciples realized their own faults and abandoned their pride of learning. Guru's grace acted in a double way that made one disciple acquire knowledge and wisdom on the one hand and removed the destructive tendency of pride from other disciples. So, it is very necessary for ordinary people like us to be always associated with noble men for guiding our life on the righteous path. Hurling stones of calumny on others would lead the people to the state of degradation, to experience the bitter taste of suffering and tormenting in number of births. Again Lord Krishna warns in the Gita, Ahankaram balandarpam kamam krodhancha samsritaha mamatma paradeheshu pradvishantobhyasuyakaha. Resorting to egoism, power, arrogance, lust and anger, these malicious people despise the Divine Lord residing in their own bodies and those of others. People of such nature use their power in humiliating others. Here, pradvishantaha indicates the great evil of paraninda. These people sling sharp arrows of abuse smeared with the poison of hate on noble people, virtuous men and women, charitable people, ascetics and recluses. And the Divine Lord says, as I am the consciousness in all creatures, I suffer harm on account of their offense. Hurting others amounts to hurting me itself. The downfall of the demoniac is in this way sealed, declares Lord Krishna. In another verse, in chapter 16, Tanahan dvishata kruran samsareshu naradhaman kshipam yajasra machupan asurishveva yonishu. Those hateful, cruel, worst among men in the world, I cast these evildoers forever into the wombs of the demoniacal births. These people who take pleasure in judging others, indulging in self-aggrandizement, brutal in their behavior, would deprive of their human state and reduce to the lowest order of life. They would be born in their next life as wild animals, tigers and wolves, serpents and other ferocious animals, to reap the fruit of their misdeeds. None can escape the law of karma, law of action. In Shruti also, this has been confirmed. Atha kapuya charana abhyasoha yatte kapuyam yonimapadyeran swayonim va shukara yonim va chandala yonim va iti. Those who indulge in activities disregarding the noble teachings of the sacred scriptures, which are for the welfare and prosperity of humanity, immediately get into detestable wombs. They become dogs, pigs, and debased beings. So we should know all these things, the bad effect of what we do, so that we can stop doing bad acts any longer. There was one person by name Hazra who lived for some time with Sri Ramakrishna in Dakshineshwar temple garden. He was a follower of knowledge. He would often criticize Sri Ramakrishna's attitude of bhakti and his longing for the young devotees. Now and then he thought of the master as a great soul, but again he slighted him as an ordinary human being. He spent much of his time in telling his beads, but he criticized the youngsters who come to Sri Ramakrishna. This gentleman, Hazra, was about 38 years old. Once as he entered, the master became a little abstracted and said in that mood, "O Hazrat, what are you doing is right in principle, but the application is not quite correct. Don't find fault with anyone, not even with an insect. As you pray to God for devotion, so also pray that you may not find fault with anybody." Holy Mother, Sri Sharda Devi, also has given the most important teaching to the spiritual aspirants, not to find fault with anybody, but to look into their own faults to attain peace. So it is for us to set ourselves right, and through our example, let God influence those around us. We should pray to God to put compunction in our heart and give us humbleness. We should be aware of our faults. We should not judge others but put ourselves below everyone. We should control our tongue and also our belly. If somebody speaks about some topic, we should not argue with him. But if he is right, say yes. If he is wrong, say, "You know what you are saying," and we should not argue with him about what he has said. That is humility. One day, a man was collecting crabs from a pond, putting them in a tub which has no cover on the top. This incident was said by Swami Vivekananda. A passerby saw this and remarked, "Oh, my dear man, what are you doing? You are taking so much trouble to gather all the crabs and dropping them one after another into the tub. But how is it you have not covered the top of it? All these crabs may come out of the tub and go away. All your difficulty in gathering them would serve no purpose afterwards." Hearing this, the man laughed at him and replied, "My friend, look into the tub carefully and see yourself what they are doing. Though some of the crabs are trying to come over the tub, there are others who are pulling their legs, as a consequence of which they would never be succeeded in their attempt to get out of the tub at all. Even so, people out of jealousy indulge in the criticism of others. They do not have any toleration. All these outward tendencies are the root of suffering and grief. When once these tendencies become a habit, then it would be very difficult to relinquish them. There is an episode which I would like to tell now. There was a saint in 16th century, a Karnataka saint by name Kanakadasa. He became one of the renowned persons in the Haridas movement, Bhakti movement, who dedicated his whole life to raise the moral tone of society and propagate devotion to the Supreme Divine. He was so much concerned about the welfare of humanity. He was so much sorry to see people suffering unnecessarily. He was very sorry to note people are not giving attention at all to the Divine Lord, who is ever ready to help them in every way. This Kanakadasa, he would go on singing about the glories of God. And these songs were the medium used by these saints to spread the message of love, devotion, and worship. These songs have got a tremendous effect. They would combine both music and dance, and all of them with spiritual sensibility. They would be blended in such a way that these songs would inspire the people who heard them. Kanakadasa, a great devotee, a great saint, came from a backward class community. Because his devotion was supreme, he had the final realization of the Divine Lord and attained perpetual happiness. He had all the noble qualities necessary for spiritual development. He was initiated by Sri Vyasatirtha, one of the greatest spiritual luminaries of the time. So, this great saint, Kanaka, came to a temple situated in a place in Karnataka. He wanted to have the darshan of Lord Krishna there. But the people surrounding the area, they would not allow this man to have even the darshan of the Lord, simply because he belonged to a backward class. But Kanakadasa did not retaliate. He tolerated the great humiliation, but he prayed intensely for the vision of the Lord. Then what happened? The Divine Lord was so much moved by his love and devotion. Suddenly, one side of the wall of the temple developed a crack and a hole formed. The image of Lord Krishna, which was facing east, turned itself to the west to give darshan to the devotee. Kanakadasa lost himself in great joy at seeing Lord Krishna. The priests who were worshipping Krishna for years, they couldn't have the blissful darshan of the Lord. They were all surprised by the devotion of this Kanakadasa. Even now, that sacred hole is named after him. He is still there. People see through this hole to have the darshan of Lord Krishna. So a number of songs composed by Kanaka teach the ethical uprightness, extolling the virtues of honesty and integrity in life and charity towards all. Unfortunately, nowadays, we find not many people try to propagate these values in life to our generations. Everybody pointing to the other, but nobody is joining together to take this great job of inculcating ethical, moral and spiritual values in our generation, younger generation. It's very important. Mahatma Gandhiji used to say, "Be your own judge and you will be in peace." Sometimes the worldly courts may free us on all counts, but the biggest and the final court is within us. It is testing us every moment. Are we true to our consciousness? That's very important. So we know where we are. We know what mistakes we commit. Though we may cover up because of various other factors. But he is a great man who understands the mistakes and tries to rectify it. There was a famous judge, Mr. Lemont, probably might have known his name. He went out on some important work. The car was moving very fast. The road was taking a sharp turn after a few yards, and the driver coursed his vehicle speedily, waving through the other cars, and went past. Mr. Lemont was not happy by the reckless driving. The driver only tried to reach the judge to the destination in time. But he did violate the law by overtaking others at the turn of the road with a high speed. So, the judge observed this. While returning, Mr. Lemont asked the driver to take the car to the nearest police station of the same area. He came out of the car and straight away went to the inspector and said, "Look, I am the judge Lemont of the city court, and this is what has happened." He described the whole incident to the officer and at the end told him, "I have awarded a fine of $5 to the culprits who commit such road offenses. So here are $5. Please take." Then the officer was surprised. He said, "Sir, you are not the offender." "No, I am." The judge said, "There is a policeman within who has already convicted me." This is the result of turning thine eyes unto thyself. You look your own faults, you will be able to find out how to correct it. There was once a holy man who engaged himself in preaching work. He lived under a tree, used to take sattvic food. He was performing pranayamas number of times in a day. There was a village nearby where lived a woman who was forced by circumstances to lead an immoral life. This holy man went every day to this lady and pointed out to her that her way of life is not good and gave warning that her wickedness would land her in hell. The situation was very difficult for her to change her method of life, which was her only means of livelihood. But she was very much worried about her terrible future depicted by the holy man. She wept and wept, but she was sincere. She prayed to the Lord, imploring to pardon her because she couldn't help herself. After some time, both the holy man and the impious lady passed away. The messengers of God came and led the soul of the lady to heaven, while the messengers of death claimed the soul of the holy man. An interesting dialogue ensued. The holy man asked surprisingly, "Why is this? Have I not lived a most holy life and preached holiness to everybody? Why should I be taken to hell while this impious woman is taken to heaven?" the messengers of death, told him, "Holy man, this woman was forced to commit impious acts on account of difficult circumstances. But she was repentant. She turned her eyes inward, fixed her mind on the divine Lord and implored for deliverance, which was granted to her by the ever graceful, compassionate Lord. But your case is different. You have, of course, performed only holy acts, no doubt. But what about your eyes? Always looking at others. Your mind was fixed on the wickedness of others. You saw only sin and thought only of sin. So now you have to go to that place where only sin is there." So it means that the outer life avails little. We should turn our eyes inward to purify ourselves, to experience peace and happiness. One more instance from Mahabharata. There was once a man by name Kaushika. He had studied well all the scriptures. He went to a forest to practice yoga. After some years of hard practice, one day he was sitting under a tree. A white crane on the top of the tree discharged its excreta on his head. The hermit, he looked at the crane with angry eyes. He shouted at it, "What dare you drop this filth on my head?" He was looking so angrily. As he uttered these words of abuse, a flash of fire issued forth of its head. Such was the power he had acquired, and burnt the bird to ashes. Thereafter, the ascetic went to a village to beg his food. He stood at a house and asked for food. The lady of the house, who was busy inside, answered him from her place to wait for a while. She was attending on her husband, who had just returned home. The ascetic at the gate became intolerant. He was proud of his power, So he began to again find out faults at her. He began to abuse her. That it was not good for the householder lady to behave that way, to make the saint wait at the entrance. So he shouted, "You are a householder. How dare you are? You are insulting the ascetics. Even the Lord of heavens cannot transgress this. Then what are human beings? Don't you know the sayings of the ancient and wise men, that the ascetics are fire, is haughty sage, as my boy." Why are you so much upset? Do you think I am like that crane? Don't be angry. What will your look of anger do to me? The ascetic was astonished about her power of knowing things happened in a remote place in a forest. Then she said further, "I do not know yoga or any such practices. I am just ordinary lady. All my life I have struggled to do my duty. When I was unmarried, I served my parents. Now that I am married, I do my duty to my husband. That's all. That's all the yoga I practice. But by performing my duty without any interruption, with steadfastness and all attention, I have become illumined. Thus, I could know what you had done in the forest. Anger is the greatest enemy. A real ascetic is he who gives up his anger and delusion. A person who doesn't hurt or injure even those who have injured him, such a person only attains perfection. The course of dharma is very subtle. Then this lady said to him, directed him to go to a particular town and meet a hunter in the marketplace to get more enlightenment. The ascetic was very much puzzled about the happenings. Anyway, as directed by the lady, he wanted to see how that hunter would behave. So he went to the said town and saw from a distance in the market a hunter sitting there cutting the meat with big knives, talking and bargaining with different people, engaging in his activities. Now this sage couldn't tolerate the way in which he was cutting the meat, etc. He began to think, what should I have to learn from this beast among men? In the meantime, the hunter looked up and said, "O holy man, did that lady send you here? Wait for some time till I finish my business." Then he took the holy man to his house and again asked him to wait for some more time. The hunter went into the house, gave bath to his old parents, fed them, and did all he could to please them, after which he came to the saint and explained him all about soul and God, etc. It is called Vyada Gita in Mahabharata, a very famous one. In the course of his talk, the hunter said to him that a person who does not judge, criticize, or abuse others, and who does not glorify oneself, is seen to shine in the world. A person who repents for the crimes gets free from them, and by not indulging in it again, he would be free from its agony. When the hunter finished his talk, the sage, the ascetic, was astonished, and he put the question, "With such knowledge as yours, why are you in a Vyadha's profession, doing such filthy, ugly work?" The hunter replied, "My son, no duty is ugly. No duty is impure. I was brought up by my birth in these circumstances and environments. I am trying to do my duty well without any kind of attachment. I try to do my duty as a householder. and I try to do all I can to make my old parents happy. I neither know your yoga, nor have I renounced everything, nor did I go out of the world into a forest. Nevertheless, all that you have heard and seen has come to me through the unattached doing of the duty. The sage became happy, having met Hunter and got enlightenment. So, turn thine eyes unto thyself means we should look within ourselves. Try to know our own faults before blaming others. Those who live in glass houses should not throw stones, as the saying goes. People whose own conduct is open to criticism should not criticize the conduct of others who may retaliate by accusing their accusers. Two friends began to criticize each other. When are you going to return that book I lent you over a month ago? It's downright dishonest to keep it so long. The other friend retorted, what about the one you borrowed from me early last year? The first one replied, I am sorry, I had forgotten all about that one. So it is taught to correct our own defects before we try to correct our brothers. We must curb the tendency to gossip, to criticize and judge others. There is a famous book written by Thomas A. Kempis. He has pointed out that we often do wrong. And what is worse, we excuse ourselves. Sometimes we are moved by passion and we think it is zeal. We reprove little things in others and pass over serious things in ourselves. We are quick to resent and ponder that which we suffer from others, but we do not think of how much others suffer from us. He who reflects well and duly weighs his own deeds would never judge others harshly. If you carry round with you thoughts of ill will, hate or anger, by looking out into others' imperfections, their destructive force will tell upon your own body and your own soul. By constantly thinking of evil in others, we become evil. Very dangerous thing. The harm they will do you is indescribable. Thought is the greatest power in the body, greater than the word, for it is a transcendental power that infuses the whole world. Good thoughts, however unimportant they may seem, will not fail to achieve their effect. Have courage and know that you create your own fate. Think sound thoughts. Utter sublime thoughts such as you would like to see realized at the level of action. With perseverance, turning thine eyes unto thyself, you will soon master your thoughts, which will then help instead of hindering you. Instead of sowing irresponsible thoughts by looking outward, which poison your own life and that of those you meet, master your thoughts by turning thine eyes unto thyself and be aware of the power you possess. So, reproach no man with imperfections. peace and happiness are bound to follow. So we should be very careful in practicing this discipline of not picking out fault in others. Positively speaking, let us engage our mind in thinking about the Divine Supreme, trying to understand the noble teachings of great men who lived the life of spirituality, trying to practice the ideas in our life sincerely. It would be possible for anybody to reach the state of perfection. Even before getting into that highest state, we would get a kind of peace and happiness which are invaluable. So, let us try to follow these lessons in our life and try to be more and more practical. Let us be very much serious about our thinking, our willing and acting. All these three must be properly blended. What we say in Sanskrit, kaya, vacha, manasa. All these aspects, whatever we do should be an act of worship to the Divine Lord. Cherish this idea and please remember that you will be always doing good to others by being good to yourself. Thank you all. Om Shanno Aditirбhavatu Vrateभिः Shanno Bhavantu Marutasvarkaः Shanno Vishnusshamupūषāno Astu Shanno Bhavitram Shamvastu Vayuः. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May our learned mothers inspire us with their righteous deeds. May the learned people of noble thoughts guide us. May the omnipresent Om bring us peace and healthy life. May this air be peaceful. Om, peace, peace, peace be unto all.